Kurt Manchios, I presume? I'm Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, you must be the one Werner told me about. What a sweet voice you have. It must belong to a handsome young man. Can I call you Sherlock?
As you wish, Mr. Manchios. Mr. Vogel asked me to help you. The body in the altar room requires answers, and quickly. I suspect the murderer to still be here.
What? Lower your voice. I don't want anyone to hear us.
Did you know Fabio well?
People are starting to look at us, Sherlock. Change the subject. I can't believe what happened to him. To me. Such an atrocity. Think what it means for me. A wonderful evening for so many good, influential, and rich people has been ruined. I have betrayed all my promises of exotic delights.
I don't understand. Surely a murder would affect your reputation to a greater extent.
Please, isn't this why you are here? I thought you were a silent magician. Do your tricks and make it go away.
I need to find all those who had the key to the altar room. As far as I know, Mr. Vogel, Fabio, and you had access to it. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. Also, Matista and Santos.
Santos? Who is that?
Santos Pinchetti, my major domo. In his opinion, at least.
I'd like to speak to Mr. Pinchetti and Matista. Do you have somewhere I might have a private conversation with them?
Of course, of course. Let me think. Matista is entertaining the guests somewhere, and Santos... Oh, yes. He will be busy with the servants. Or the cook. What's that noise? What's going on? Freeze, filth. You're under arrest.
Committed a crime, and now I have to free you, kiss your hand, and apologize for the inconvenience. Your Grace.
I did tell you that Mr. Vogel and I were innocent. I emphasized it in my statement.
Your statement? Thanks to some bigwigs who work for the so-called good of the country by releasing fleas like you. Thank God we have Vogel in his letter. Once I get to that goldfish, I'll...
Bigwig? Oh, my wretched brother Mycroft and his long nose.
Wait, did you say Mycroft? Mycroft Holmes? Are you the youngest son of Violet Holmes, rest her soul?
You knew my mother?
Not personally, no. Not exactly. I was working on the paperwork for that case.
Would you happen to remember anything of the events?
Well, I didn't make the inquiry, but I remember seeing some notes. Why?
Perhaps we can negotiate. I could be quite useful.
Huh. Got you hooked, right? You know what? Stark and the others think they're the smartest here, thanks to you. Let me get this straight. Are you listening to me, lad?
I'm all ears.
Take this case. Report to me only, to Constable Harvey Oswald. I'll leave everything I have on this table. Find the murderer. Be a real copper. Question the suspects, make them sing, give me something substantial.
And if Mr. Vogel is not a suspect?
If he's innocent, then you can take your favourite degenerate away from here. If you slip or mess with the evidence, then trust me, your brother won't save you from my bludgeon. Meanwhile, I'll be checking the archive for you. If anybody asks, then you're a consulting detective.
Let's make a start then, partner.
I'm glad we managed to get the scoop before the raid.
Back on track to solve the case.
Look, I found Werner.
Werner, are you all right?
Oh, yes. Everything's fine. In fact, it's something of a family reunion. My brother spent quite some time in this place himself.
You should not be here. I told the police everything I knew, but they refused to let you go. They require proof to free you.
Ha! What did you expect? The mighty Sherlock Holmes swans in, tells the officers what to think, and the world obeys?
Of course not. Anyway, I struck a deal with the constable, and I've got a free hand in the investigation. I find proof to solve the case for him. He obtains files about my mother's death for me.
Well done. If one has the power or will and can act, then one must. I wonder, suppose you couldn't get the proof to your truth. Would you tell a lie to the guard that enabled my freedom, knowing my innocence? Would that not be just?
There are lines I will not cross, Werner. I will do my best to secure your release, but with proof, not deception.
Really? How many white lies have you told on this island? Why not for me? Why not another?
That is absurd. I can resolve this without compromises. Do not give up hope.
I don't think I can tell you anything about this. I'm not supposed to know anything about this. I'm not supposed to know anything about this.
I have learned who told the police about the crime. It was Santos Pinchetti,
Do I know him?
the major domo of the manor. He cleans up after you.
Well, then he does his job perfectly. All but invisible. I couldn't tell you the first thing about him.
Good day, Mr. Manchios. I am Constable Oswald's partner in this investigation.
Be quick and gentle. Some of your colleagues are untrained boors. Although I don't mind meeting young officers. The new blood here.
If you cooperate in finding Fabio's murderer, there will be no need to meet with the Boers again.
That voice. Werner's friend? You're the policeman. What a disappointment.
Only an undercover agent can scour a ditch full of deviants. I am a consulting detective, although I'm capable of replacing the entire department through my consultations.
Sharp-tongued, I like it. May I presume this tongue will get us out of this trouble? I would be so indebted and glad to repay you.
Nothing's changed. I'm looking for the murderer. That's the only way to get us out of trouble.
But it shouldn't take much time, correct? We're all busy after all.
I need to examine you first. You are a little over the top with your use of makeup, Mr. Manchios. Is it so difficult for you to acknowledge your age?
Well, Sherlock, that's easy for you to say to an old man when you look as though you are barely 15.
But still, it shouldn't be an issue for someone of your status.
For people of my age, it isn't an issue, no. But the younger ones can be so afraid of wrinkles and grey flecks. I have to adapt.
Such a methodical man who cares for his body but misses the soap under his fingernails. Are you so impatient, or perhaps even impulsive?
I wouldn't call myself that. Silly little details. If I missed it, it wasn't important. Or rather, it was less important than who or what I was focused on. You'd better ask someone else. I've no idea about that. You'd better ask someone else. That's not something I know much about. You'd better ask someone else. I've no idea about that. I've no idea about that. That's not something I know much about. I've no idea about that. Of course, it was you. I could even say you Sherlocked me in here.
A good guess, but the wrong one. The fellow who did that was Mr. Pinchetti, your major domo.
What? Santos? But how could he even know? If he's not the murderer himself. The ungrateful swine. He has dared to besmirch my reputation.
Not a very eloquent choice of words.
What should I call him then, since he's a snitch? Make him talk, Sherlock. I'm quite certain he knows more about the murder than he has told the police. I've no idea about that.
You bought an expensive pair of cufflinks for Fabio. Were they his price? Or were they a tip for an exclusive show?
It was pure business. Fabio escorted me a few times. I was merely showing my gratitude.
This pair cost a small fortune. You must be extremely grateful then. Tell me more.
You've thrust a knife in an exposed nerve, Sherlock. Yes, he was my protege and my beacon also. With my experience and his beauty, we could have achieved anything. I had faith in him. I would have made him.
Mr. Vogel told me a little about your parties, but I would like to know more directly from you.
I'm all yours, Sherlock. You have me arrested and locked here with you alone.
Why did you invite Mr. Vogel as your special guest?
He's a pretty fellow. He's capable of surprising the public. He has a talent for saying words that no one else would wish to either say or hear.
I suppose I can't argue with that.
He is a free addition to the eccentricity of the party, which is fine by me, as long as it enhances my party.
I'd like to know who you usually invite to your parties.
Free minds who are able to leave reality for an evening, who can taste forbidden fruit without prejudice. There is nothing that quite spices up life like these parties. assuming one is old enough and has worked many years for the good of one's country.
Oh, all true laborers, I see. What was Fabio like? His personality, his habits? Anything you can tell me?
He was the brightest star of my parties. Young, magnetic, and full of energy. I don't even want to mention his beauty. Otherwise, I'll be sobbing.
An expensive champion, I imagine.
His performances were flawless. He deserved his payment. Do you think he was murdered because of money?
Possibly. What about the other guests? Were they used to opening their wallets as well?
I wouldn't restrict my guests from anything. I'm sure Fabio received a few coins from others for his services.
I'm Sherlock Holmes. I'm helping Constable Oswald. You are Matista, Fabio's friend.
This body, yes, it's Matista. But it's a mere shell that will die someday. Just like Fabio.
Please accept my condolences for your friend.
Thank you.
I'm just here to ask questions and find Fabio's murderer.
It will not bring Fabio back.
Fabio and yourself were slaves, am I correct? You have a similar branding on your body.
Yes. It was a long time ago.
Couldn't help but also notice fresh cuts upon your forearms.
The cuts helped me to forget my past. To cover the old wounds and hide them.
How did you escape?
Something happened. One night the master fell down the stairs. I made him fall, and he died. We ran away that day. We managed to get on a ship and traveled here, to Cordona. Fabio and I started a new life here. It was very hard at first, but it became better with time. Until today.
The bruises on your neck are not self-inflicted. Someone else made them.
Some guests can't contain themselves. They even bite, sometimes.
I know you can untangle this mess.
Did you hear Basilio Coppello is in jail?
In the police. Let's pretend to be cops, eh? We can just stand around and look confused.
Good day. Your ticket, please, if you want me to help you. Don't you understand what a ticket is? Don't you understand what a ticket is?
I'd like to check the evidence from this case.
And who are you?
Oswald sent me. I'm a consulting detective.
His partner, then? Let me see. Ah, a ritual murder. What a bunch of degenerates. Wait a second. I'll bring it to the table.
A heavily perfumed handkerchief with the initials KM in the corner. All the keys of the mansion on one golden ring. It's a miracle this ruby hasn't tempted anyone. Not the time for privacy. An emergency kit for boredom. Her key to the altar room. A handcrafted charm that contains hair and nail clippings. That's not for bedtime reading. This ex libris belongs to Manchios Library. The book describes a ritual similar to the one performed in the altar room. Werner's personal sketchbook. Thank you, officer.
You'd better ask me a question I know how to answer. You'd better ask me a question I know how to answer. You'd better ask me a question I know how to answer. I don't think I can tell you anything about this. I've nothing to say about this. You'd better ask me a question I know how to answer. I've nothing to say, sir.
Have you considered Mr. Santos Pinchetti as a suspect?
The snitch? Have you seen him? I mean, my breath could knock him down. What's so special about him?
As a major domo, he has keys that open all the rooms, including the one to the crime scene. Could have testified only to circumvent suspicion, don't you think? We need to question him.
Right. I'll send our men to fetch him. Stay here. They brought him in, Mr. Holmes. Here's the key to interrogation room number 7. Mr. Pinchetti didn't even resist, our men said.
Thank you. Mr. Pinchetti, a pleasure to meet you. I'm Sherlock Holmes. I'm helping Constable Oswald.
I've already told him everything I know. I'm only a witness, sir. Everything's in my report.
And I've read it. You forgot to mention that you hold the keys to the room where Fabio was found. I need only to find if the crime was intentional.
But I need to return to my duties.
I doubt the house will fall without you, Mr. Pinchetti. Just be still for a few seconds. You are the major domo of a rich mansion, and you seem barely able to afford decent clothing. You hide, under heavy makeup, a skin disease that might be treated with more onerous but less harmful means. Do you have money troubles?
I do not have a lot of means. The pay is below what you might expect.
But you could easily change your job if your employer does not meet your elementary needs.
One can change his employer, that is true.
And the blood on your shoe, where does that come from?
I don't actually know. Perhaps from a guest?
Did you know Fabio?
Not personally. He was a frequent guest, and cleaning the mess after his performances was tedious. Mr. Manchios always had a role for him, and mainly the leading one. The parties were always, Fabio-centric?
And Batista? Was she as popular as her partner?
Don't tell her I said this, but I do not think so. Mr. Manchios hired her only because Fabio refused to work without her. Mr. Manchios used to see her as a worker. She was tasked with entertaining the guests, unlike Fabio, who could pick and choose. Please let me out.
I'm not supposed to know anything about this. I can't follow you here.
So the police found a letter from Fabio in your pocket?
I cannot tell if it was truly in my pocket at all. Perhaps it was placed there later.
Well, that is one hypothesis. If it were true, then how did it get there?
No clue. But this night has been rather eccentric. Such a detail could have easily eluded me.
Indeed. Do you recall reading it?
I can't remember that either. But I tend to respect privacy. Reading others' personal notes is not one of my perversities.
Continue our investigation while I look for the papers.
I don't know what to say. I've nothing to add to say.
This book, The Power of Love, Blood, and Mandrake, what do you hope to achieve?
To learn more about the invisible strengths that govern us. Occultism is real. The master who fell that night when Fabio and I escaped. I made him fall. I cast a spell on him and it worked.
Or was it a coincidence?
The universe is really so lazy.
If you say so.
I've nothing to say.
This is the letter the police found in Mr. Vogel's pocket. Fabio wrote it. Do you know anything about it?
I don't. Although I can feel Fabio's energy. It's there, but it refuses to let me analyze it.
Do you practice occult rituals?
For protection? For fortune? To wash away the ugliness of the world? Sometimes to survive. I have the gift, and I'm learning to use it better.
Did you use your gift on Fabio?
I only used white magic. Love charms lately. Fabio became so distant. I just wanted him to be with me, but I suppose I'm not as skilled as I thought.
You'd better ask someone else.
I've read this letter from Fabio. It had no addressee, but it was found in Mr. Vogel's pocket.
Werner? Strange. I didn't think the two of them corresponded.
I'm sure there is some explanation. Would you care to read it?
Call me superstitious, but I don't care to read a letter from a dead man.
Do you recognize this book? Could Matista have borrowed it from your library?
She didn't ask me. How ungrateful.
The things described in the book were inspiration for the rituals you performed?
Do you really believe that blood, symbols, and incantations can resurrect the dead? They are just eerie tales with a mix of occultism and voodoo. My rituals are a stage to show some of the forbidden pleasures.
Continue our investigation while I look for the papers.
I recognize the key from the altar room among these. Mr. Manchios says that you begged him to be included in the heritage. Isn't that a little extreme, even for a major domo?
He's not only my employer, he's my uncle. And I'm his next of kin. The only one. Mr. Manchios flatly refuses to pay a family member. All I have to do is repay his so-called love, cleaning up the filth after perverts and decadents. He's imprisoned me. The best I can hope for is a new broom. That's why I wanted to have my part of the inheritance.
Is it that bad? You have a roof above your head, a salary, and the status of a major domo.
For God's sake. I'm forced to dye and stitch my threadbare clothes, and the holes in my shoes are painful. I'm ashamed every time a guest looks at me closely.
Why do you think your uncle treats you this way?
My mother, my uncle's sister, had me illegitimately. She died, and I was given the surname of one of the maids.
But you are entitled to some of the money that belongs to your family.
He thinks not. I was not responsible for my mother's death. I work hard, and he pays me nothing. I feed on the leftovers. While he wastes our estate's property on decadent parties, he paid Fabio handsomely and showered him with expensive gifts for their disgusting relationship. Please let me out.
There is undeniable evidence that you were the original recipient of this letter.
What are you talking about? Is it addressed to me?
Your protege wanted a fresh start, it seems. This is sufficient to charge you.
Me? Hurt my star? Are you insane that you would accuse me of such a thing?
He did not consider himself as yours. Since you deny everything, let's move on. Do you have any idea as to how the letter could have ended up in Mr. Vogel's pocket?
You were the detective. Perhaps he took it from Fabio. Werner was a little high. That's not something I know much about.
I've read the letter about your will. A harsh method of ridiculing Santos. I doubt he will use mustache wax when he wears no mustache to begin with.
Where did you get it? Is the slug here? Tell him. I shouldn't have to provide for him. He's a grown man who shouldn't sit on his uncle's neck. He conceives himself as my only heir.
And who is he to you?
He's a leech on my aging body. He has only added problems to my life since the death of his mother.
I fail to see why you made him your major domo.
He needed to know his place, so I taught him.
Could Fabio have written this letter to Kurt Manchos?
Oh. That could be. I never thought Mr. Manchos could make Fabio that angry, though.
What do you mean?
Well, Fabio wanted to disassociate from Mr. Manchos. Clients who are in love are both a blessing and a curse.
But Fabio was here tonight.
Money. In our line of work, we can't afford to turn down clients who pay as well as Kurt Manchos.
Was Fabio afraid of Mr. Manchos?
Not at all. The old toad wouldn't dare to do more than sweet talk and touching. Talk can be forgotten, and touching washed away.
I can't wrap my head around such a tragedy at my party.
Please let me out.
I have reason to believe that the intended recipient of the incriminating letter may have been Kurt Manchos.
Well, that makes sense. Too bad I can't remember how I came to possess it. Though I did spend quite some time with Mr. Manchios during the party.
Unfortunately, even with an answer, that may still not be enough to clear you with the police. But fear not, I will persevere.
I hope your attempt to put things straight will make up for...
You being on a bender?
touché.
Please let me out.
The murder of Fabio did not have a ritual purpose, Mr. Manchios. It was staged by a man who wished to distract the investigation.
That might be true. That poor girl Matista wouldn't dare to kill the only man who cared for her. So, Santos,
Mr. Pinchetti snatched at the chance to solve his problems.
Ungrateful little scum. Will he be executed?
But what for? He informed the police as to the crime, that was all. He couldn't stage the ritual, but he found the body, I believe.
I can't believe it. Why did Werner do it?
Mr. Vogel, he had no reason, and he won't be a scapegoat as you plan. You put Fabio's letter in his pocket when he was intoxicated, didn't you?
You can't be serious.
We can very often deduce someone's life by their shoes or their fingernails. You are a meticulous person, but this murder was fairly traumatic and filthy. After you stabbed Fabio, you were covered in blood. You panicked and neglected to rinse the soap from under your fingernails. The devil is in the details, Mr. Manchios.
Nonsense. I missed it simply because of the busy schedule of the party.
Of course, a staged murder was certainly not planned. You're at the twilight of your life. You have no partner, you have no children. You had feelings, however, for one man. That was Fabio. You loved him. That is, you wished to own him with money and gifts. But he was also a free mind, was he not? He turned his back on you. Quite unjust. Love, so cruel and painful, and Fabio, with his words and deeds, made you feel the more wretched. So you killed him.
You must surely perceive that my sensitive nature wouldn't allow me to hurt anyone.
You staged the murder as a satanic ritual. It was easy for you, since you were the one who wrote the scenarios for the parties. It was your way of avoiding suspicion. A respectable man in his 60s,
Early 60s.
who hosts the cream of Cordona society, cannot possibly be a murderer. But the guests who behave like animals in his mansion, of course, one of them could have killed Fabio.
I did oversee a few of the rituals, but I did not stage Fabio's death.
The young performer played with your emotions. That was painful to realize. You spent so much time and effort to be with Fabio, but he didn't respond in the way you would have liked. You wanted to be loved. Fabio shattered your dreams. In the smoking lounge, he teased and mocked you. He wanted you to suffer by offering himself to others. The deception was unbearable. You struck him, and then you staged the ritual. You planted the letter in Vogel's pocket and attempted to set up Matista.
What poppycock? Sherlock, stop this game now.
There is no stop word, Mr. Manchios. Relax and enjoy it. I'll pass the remainder of this case to Constable Oswald. He'll know what to do with you. I have a name for you. Kurt Manchios.
Is that so? The master of the Sabbath?
The man himself. Mr. Manchios couldn't stand to lose control over his lover. A deadly revenge that deserves a proper sentence. I have all the evidence to charge him.
A degenerate and a murderer. I'll make a name thanks to that for sure. As for my part, not everything was in place. Perhaps some documents were transferred somewhere else, but I couldn't find a trace of them. Then I remembered. The discarded document drawers where we put the lost papers or the badly labelled ones. Including the crime scene report of Violet Holmes's case. Everything I've found is on the desk here. Take it.
Your persistence has saved me.
Yeah, well, we had a deal after all. Your friend is free then. You can leave.
Good luck, Constable.